Yeah, welcome to Bonafide Dialogues, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful.
In a world that's always racing forward, sometimes we need to slow down and reconnect.
Connect genuinely, broaden your perspective, and share your passion.
Bonafide Dialogues, where authenticity, creativity, and passion merge. Alex J. Wall is a seasoned legal leader specializing in privacy, security, and AI governance, with nearly 2 decades of experience. Based in Portland, Oregon, Alex advises businesses on compliance with emerging technology standards while building innovative applications that streamline operations and protect user privacy and choice. Currently, Alex serves as Senior Commercial, Privacy, Security and AI Counsel at Wall Law, LLC, and Flex by Fenwick and West, where he advises primarily Bay Area AI companies on data strategy, copyright risk, cross-border data flows, and AI governance, while automating complex contract and compliance workflows. Previously, Alex served as Director of Privacy at Zendesk. His experience spans industry, having led privacy and compliance teams at top-tier software companies, including Rimini Street, Adobe, Marketo, and Radar Incorporated. Alex holds a Juris Doctor from University of Maine and a BA in International Studies from Colby College, with admissions to the bars of New York and Oregon.
In today's episode, we will be talking about how AI is changing privacy and what it means for all of us. But before we dive in, I wanted to ask you, what inspired you to become a privacy attorney?
I think it was a combination of the confluence of several different events. I was partly directed into it by myself and partly fell into it. I began my career long ago as an IT person in the Bay Area during the dot-com boom. And I left that because there wasn't enough interpersonal action, I guess. There just wasn't really a lot of humanity to what I was doing. I was watching a lot of bars go across the screen, but I did learn a ton about IP protocol and setting up drivers and all sorts of things like that. Then when I moved on, and I had a short stint where I did some substitute teaching because I like to teach and I like to talk
What
with
did
people.
you teach?
I taught English to
Okay.
high schoolers, and I really enjoyed it. But I also found that I needed, so that created this other framework. So I've always had this verbal side and a technical side. And finally, I decided to go to law school because I knew that I wanted to, I wanted to understand the structure and the policies that make the world work. Why do people do what they do? Why do we have to do that? Do I have to sign that waiver? It's about control and autonomy. From there, I worked for several years in Manhattan at a well-known firm called Fried Frank that had international clients in the banking sector. I was there when the when the credit crunch happened and people were leaving Lehman Brothers carrying boxes all in a single day, um, and around that time, I met my future spouse who lived in Oregon. And I decided that I wanted to move. It was a good time. And I became interested in a company that was doing electronic discovery and databases and was applying law to technology in Oregon. So I joined that company, became their first in-house counsel, and learned a ton. I mean, even to the point of it was a strange combination of things because I was building servers to serve relativity, and I was applying textual analytics to text documents and auto coding responsiveness tags and things like that. Basically, doing a full stack deployment because it was a small business. From there, privacy became more and more important. It was before GDPR, and I realized that I really wanted to focus on that. It was very exciting to me because with all of the data and all of the control that people were leveraging over data, and the fact that more and more information could be amassed in more and more powerful computers, it occurred to me that society really needed to grapple with what this meant for you and I. And I became very interested in privacy.
And,
Uh,
my podcast is not only for attorneys or people working in technology. So I just wanted to stop for a moment and explain, because I think it's an interesting connection here between e-discovery and privacy.
Well, litigation and e-discovery goes directly to privacy because the litigants have some of their most sensitive secrets in that information that should only be used in court, and only some of it should ever come out. So it's very sensitive data. The sheer quantity of data that is processed and the sheer diversity of that information requires strong technical skills and the ability to basically process any kind of random data that might appear in the wild that any new sort of program might create. And that gives you an insight into what's really there. And then once you start applying e-discovery tools like analytics to get to the actual smoking gun in a case, that's when you realize that these tools can put a microscope on some of the least expected parts of our lives. Um, and I saw that, I had a front row seat to that in several cases that involved some, I can't even talk about it,
I
right?
know,
But I mean,
I know. I'm in the same situation.
yeah, but I think privacy was a very interesting gateway because it taught me about databases and technology, but I also had to answer customers' questionnaires about how we were protecting their data. So deep reviews of SOC 2 Type 2 and the emerging privacy standards at that time. So that by the time I went on my own to become a privacy attorney, and then was brought in-house at Radar First, an incident response company, and moved on to Marketo and other SaaS companies over time, ending up most recently at Zendesk to lead their privacy program. It's just
It
been,
definitely makes a lot of sense. That experience that you had in e-discovery is very valuable for your privacy work.
yeah, I feel like it gives me an insight to understand what vendors are doing with data, what customers expect from us with their data, how to negotiate contractual provisions around it. And I think that generally speaking, you can't really work in privacy without understanding data. It's 100%. And sometimes that's hard to explain to people. Sometimes they think, oh, you're a lawyer, you do this. Or then the engineers say, oh, you're a lawyer, you do that. And then you find yourself right in the middle, asking
Yes.
questions that both sides don't really
The
understand why you're asking the
intersection,
question.
yes.
So it's very interesting, to me anyway.
Right. And many people believe that we completely lost privacy. So many people think that privacy is dead. How much
Yeah,
privacy are we willing to give up for convenience? How much privacy are we willing to give up for security? These are some of the complex but very important questions. What do you think?
I think it's kind of, I think it's unusual that people think that because as I think about my data and my neighbors think about theirs, they're increasingly concerned about it. So the idea that privacy is dead, I think, comes out of maybe the regulatory environment because there's a little bit less enforceability, a little less enforcement in some areas. But we have seen that US and European authorities are very active in protecting children's privacy, which I think that we can all agree on is extremely important.
100%.
And not only that, but I think that the concept of privacy is moving further away from being a compliance topic and more a just a fundamental safety concern because as AI has caused us to realize what people can do with this data, and more people have actually gone in and used tools like ChatGPT, and we've seen headlines about people's private conversations getting published, or about private conversations that never saw the light of day until someone committed suicide because something communicated with them in a certain way. And I think that the general public is really starting to get it, because 10 years ago, we were talking about, oh, I don't care if someone sees what I put on Pinterest, right? I have control over it. I don't care what we post on Facebook. But now people are like, wait a minute, the last 10 years, they've been training on my face. Like they've been training image generators, all this stuff. I think it's really starting to dawn on people. And for that reason, whether there's actual enforcement immediately or not, the political pressures are going to push tech companies one way or the other to have to be very, very careful with people's personal information. Because I think the technology is evolving as well. I think that it is now possible to do some pretty sophisticated things on a local device. It's no longer really an excuse to say, oh, it has to be in the cloud because, that's the only way we can do this.
Right. Every time we come up with some new technology, it seems like we give away more of our privacy, step by step. So it doesn't happen overnight, but then we look back, we realize that it becomes dangerous at this point.
Right. And, some people will throw up their hands and say, there's nothing I can do about it. Privacy is dead. But there is. From today and the next day and the next day is making decisions about how we choose to present ourselves and what we're interacting with. Because while it's true that we're leaving trails everywhere we go, it's not necessarily, they're not all equal. So it's important just to think about, ever since becoming a parent, I've also become more concerned about this because, surprise, surprise, I actually care about someone else more than I care about myself now, right? And I think about every single time that my daughter's photo appears anywhere and what that consequence might be for the rest of her life. So, it's an interesting time, I'll say that. And it's really motivated me to take a hard look at technology and whether those answers of, no, we can't do that this way because we have to have that data to make our tool work, or it won't work unless it's in the cloud. It's really caused me to examine those things.
Yeah, and then you understand technology. You're not only an attorney, but you build your own tool, right? So you have deep understanding of technology.
Yeah, so I will admit it. I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole. I think it started back with ChatGPT 3.5 in November, and I got my beta account with them, and all of a sudden I realized that this little, I've always been able to sort of code, sort of script or whatever, but that brought me to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, I can ask this thing how to do this, how to do it best, and I had
You love
just
technology.
yeah. So all of a sudden I'm like, well, I can build this thing. So one of the first things I did was build a retrieval augmented generation system that pulled compliance answers out of a database and processed them to fit a questionnaire's questions, because as you know, we all want to know a lot of similar things from other companies about how they're using our data, but we just phrase them all slightly differently. And that was a big success, actually. I think people are still using the tool that I made. And that opened a creative fire in me that I've never experienced before. I've just been building things left and right. And right now, I'm building something that I think that I genuinely want to give to people, which is an agentic system that runs on one's own device. and gives them choice over what AI they want to use and gives them transparency over how the agents are working and stores their personal context right there on their computer. Um,
So
so
going back to that first tool you built, so everyone can understand what it is. When employees, for example, have some questions about compliance, they reach out to internal compliance department with questions. And if you have a company with thousands of employees, there are chances that many of them will have the same questions, right? So you created a tool where they can go and ask questions and find answers to those common questions. And it saves time for compliance department and helps employees to understand the requirements better. And some employees maybe not always feel comfortable reaching out to compliance department. It's much easier for them to use this tool and find the answer to some simple questions. Of course, in most situations, they need to reach out to attorneys, they need to reach out to compliance professionals to ask questions, but this tool can be very helpful, right? Is that correct?
yeah, actually, there was that, and then the other part was actually providing answers to customers because customers would send us, large Excel files with full of questions, and this tool could iterate through the Excel file, send each question in its context over to a database, get answers back, and write the answers back into the Excel in an automated fashion. And back then, I mean, this was a couple of years ago. I mean, I think it was actually before even Perplexity got started, and I realized that grounding AI in fact from your context was the best way to guard against hallucination and get something genuinely useful out of it. I don't think AI is like out here to be our best friend or our therapist. I don't think that's really it's glorified processing. It's truly a next generation of conditional thinking, if you will. It's not really thinking, but that where it can take multiple steps and process and format information in ways that makes easier sense to each one of us. And in that way, it can really empower people. Um, and I think that's the best use for it, personally.
Going back to the tool that you're building now, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one thing that really frustrated me about work, and always has been, no offense to anyone out there, but there's like a zillion SaaS applications. And you onboarded a company, and there's about 12 different tools, and they're all in different tabs. And then you're switching around, cutting and pasting all the time. And it occurred to me that the sidebar in a persistent sidebar was like the perfect chat interface because everyone was doing co-pilots and things like that. And I thought to myself, why don't I just take a crack at building, you know, my ideal platform that would help me just dance and bounce between all these different tabs and just maintain sanity as I'm working through my day. So I created this thing that I decided to call PebbleFlow. I called it PebbleFlow just out of the idea of water flowing around obstacles because there's no perfect path from the beginning to the end or a perfect procedure. You have context and it's flowing, and you go from tab to tab and you maintain that flow in your sidebar as you go. Since the time that I started creating it, I noticed that, you know, companies have been starting to do this a little bit more too. But I've created this thing that is generally useful. I use it on a regular basis because it uses the API instead of the proprietary platforms of different things. So I can use Claude or ChatGPT or even Grok or any model I want out of hundreds of them. I can switch them at any time. And I know that when I use the API, there's a zero data retention agreement with most of those vendors, which means that they're not even supposed to keep those sends and returns. So that way I can protect the confidence of clients if I'm using this tool. So it's really, it's in this world and day and age, we're bombarded with information all the time. And and I really wanted a productivity platform that was built for where I work, which is in a browser.
That's great. Is it available for anyone to use now?
It is. It's in a soft beta right now, and it's available in the Chrome extension store. And this is unusual because I think I might have been one of the only people crazy enough to build the entire agentic platform in the browser extension. Like there are a lot of development limitations to that, and people don't like doing that because you can't do everything that you want. But it's actually, I actually was able to do everything I wanted. It was just a bit harder. But in being harder, it protects people's privacy because all of my conversations, all of my settings are right there and they can be exported at any time. I can even import conversations from ChatGPT or Claude if I want to. And so anyway, yeah, it's at pebbleflow.ai. And pebbleflow.ai is a website that's got a bunch of things. You just go to the install tab and it will take you to the currently unlisted PebbleFlow extension. You can just install it with a click and try it for free. And it's my sincere hope that everyone loves it as much as I do.
I love
And
this because, AI tool that is built by privacy professional gives you a lot of trust.
well, yeah, I mean, this is really, I feel like it's almost like the culmination of my career so far was not in, I do care very much about privacy legal work, and I can't get that out of my head, but I also care very much about the implementation. And I finally had this opportunity to just make something that was truly, truly privacy by design. Like no shortcuts. Like
Amazing. I love
it
this.
it was the yeah. So I'm excited about it. And I really hope people go out there and try it, even in the beta stage. It's going to continue to get better. I add features to it every day.
Wonderful. And you started talking a little bit about agentic AI.
Right.
Let's maybe focus a little bit on this subject and talk about risks and what can we do to mitigate those risks in terms of privacy.
Well, I think that agentic AI has a lot of risks. I once generated an image as a joke that was a toddler driving a semi. And that's kind of what an agent is in some ways, because you have a sub, you know, a child like an AI agent has less wisdom and a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of capability. And so sort of like a hyperactive intern, you say, "Hey, go do this," and it just goes off and does it. And it's not always questioning, "Should I?" And I think that that's a very and the difference between a chat bot and an agent is that one helps you think and the other helps you actually do. And so one example of, complete guardrails off kind of agent platform would be OpenClaw, which came out.
Yeah.
And you install that, and then you can set up some messengers, and then you can just text your computer, and your computer does all sorts of crazy stuff without your direct supervision. And you can scope it or whatever, but fundamentally, it isn't built with a lot of guides about how to protect yourself. It could grab your email and it could send it to anybody just because it made a mistake or it was stupid. And AI makes mistakes all the time, which is why we
And
have
you're
to
the one responsible for all the consequences.
Yes. Yeah. The only person that's going to be responsible at the end of the day is us. I mean, people are talking about, oh, Moltbook. There's like this social media platform for AI agents. It's the singularity appearing. This is how true AI happens because all these agents talk to you. There are 50 bots per human, right? They're prompting all of this. It's just science fiction, really, because these bots are being prompted by humans to do approximately what they do, right? So it's not the idea that AI is just a tool. It's a very sophisticated tool, but it's just a tool and it will go off the rails. And that's why we have to watch it.
Yes,
So,
many people say AI is just a tool. It's just like a knife. It can do good or it can do bad. If good actor using knife, you can prepare a nice meal. If a bad actor, some bad things may happen. But I respectfully disagree with this opinion. You really cannot compare AI to just a tool because it's much more sophisticated, and even good actor with good intentions using AI can produce very bad consequences
I
because
think
you're
you're right.
not
I think you're
always
right
in
about
control. You're not in control.
I think you're right that that's where the analogy breaks down of the tool, right? Because a knife is a very simple thing, and a computer is a more
Very
complicated.
predictable, right? You can predict what can happen. With AI, it's almost impossible to predict because we don't really know what happens in between.
Sure, but when I say it's just a tool, I'm talking about the fact that it's not a person.
Yes,
But yeah, generally speaking, it's unpredictable what it might do. You have a cone of possibility as to what it might do because it's
especially agent, right? AI agent.
yeah, agents are gonna solve a problem not always the same way each time, and they're not going to generate the same words each time. They're not going to pick the same tools each time. Um, so it's important to have guardrails like human in the loop, where if it's about to access your email, it warns you and it says, "I'm about to access your email." In your program, actually, that's an agentic loop of PebbleFlow, is that it asks for your approval before it does things
That's
like that,
great.
and that's I think a key safety measure.
I like your comparison. You said that just a toddler with so much power and so many capabilities, right? Maybe at some point, this AI agents become adults, become some wise, actors that would be able to take some actions, and another agent, for example, will be like a compliance officer, like, right, watching one agent supervising another agent, but it's complicated.
Yeah, they do sort of do that already. I mean, there are compliance agents that run in the background of a lot of platforms, and they sort of watch what's going out the door, and they will sometimes halt the main agent from doing something when they're like, "Oh, wait a second, this might violate copyright or something like that." It's interesting.
Yeah, we're moving so fast, and there's so many discussions about our AI race with China. What do you think about that, and what are the consequences for us?
Well, I think that one has to respect China. China is a large company with a lot of smart people in it.
Large
And
country, yeah.
yeah, and a lot of capability. And they've demonstrated this over and over again. Um, and really is a race, and there really is, like, I mean, Anthropic was mentioning yesterday that there's been this industrial scale attack of thousands of fake accounts, pulling questions and answers out of Anthropic's strongest models because they're doing this technique called distillation, which means that you basically try to get the intelligence of a model by getting question and answer pairs out of it so that you can use that to train your own model. So it's a kind of attack. So it's legitimate in some cases, but not when you're violating the terms of use to make a competing platform. And that's what's been happening. They've also been building things from scratch. Every day you hear about new AI tools coming out. Like yesterday, there was a local voice application that Quen put out where you can record 30 seconds of a voice and it just clones it. I don't think it sounds like me exactly, but it does clone it quite well. So there's a lot of competition, and I think that there very easily could be a strategy where open source is being used as a weapon against US-based companies that have, subscriptions and revenue streams. So it's a complicated space. I don't want to moralize on either side necessarily, but there's definitely a real race. I think other countries are involved as well, um, but from what I've seen, China is the biggest actual competitor.
Yes, it's interesting because we're moving so fast, and there's so many new startups popping up on a weekly basis. So how would you guide those founders as a privacy attorney?
I really think that more than ever before, getting it right from the outset is important. I think, understanding the principles of privacy by design at the beginning, before you start building too far, are very helpful in mitigating AI risks and also long-term brand issues. Because we're in a world where many people can build lots of tools very fast. And what's going to distinguish those tools is trust more than anything else, I think.
Absolutely.
So if you can choose two equivalent products and one is more trustworthy, you're going to choose that. And you might even put a premium on it because more and more AI is helpful, but also scary. Um, so I would advise companies to really take privacy by design seriously. And I also think that one thing that companies are doing right now that is particularly concerning is HR departments are using AI in employment decisions, hiring decisions, firing, and performance. And they should be aware that there's regulations in California and Europe and emerging in more and more states that just we haven't seen enforced a lot. But there have been a few things like a workday enforcement. Um, but that's a key human in the loop situation. You need to have a manager making a real decision. It's maybe okay to have data summarized to help that manager. Uh, but even that can influence them falsely if AI is wrong, and AI is wrong a lot. Um, it's it, it's I would advise companies not to be too lenient with their procurement processes because the emphasis at companies is often to be customer first, which I think is great. But you have to look at your supply chain, and you have to look at your internal stuff because you can very seriously change the risk profile of your company by applying AI foolishly to the HR process.
Yes, this is a very important point. And could you please give us a quick overview? I know it's a big question of the AI regulations landscape in the world. I know it's a lot to ask, but just maybe something that you find interesting and important. Maybe talk a little bit about trends we're seeing now in 2026.
I think that one of the biggest international things that I'm seeing in privacy enforcement is the protection of children. It's like we can all agree, protect the kids. And we've seen that, I think, just today. Reddit was fined by the ICO in the UK because there wasn't adequate, they're alleging that there wasn't adequate uh, child age gating on their platform and that they weren't adequately protecting children that way. And that's a social media platform. Now you take that and you magnify the risks by AI, and we're going to see larger fines and larger enforcements around the world in the protection of children when they're online, especially when they're talking to AI. Um, so I think that that's a big trend that's been going on.
And this is very important and reasonable. And I agree that we all can agree that we need to protect our children. And I personally believe that kids should not use social media until age of 16, and I would recommend even 18. But I heard some founders would say, "Oh, I can't say our platform is for 18 plus." Then people start thinking that there is some adult content on my platform, but it's a regular social media app, for example. So they don't want to be associated with 18 plus uh, platforms. They don't want people to get the wrong impression. But definitely, I think under 16, there's nothing to do for kids on those social media apps. Of course, internet is very important. Of course, um, for educational purposes, even entertainment sometimes, but it all needs to be, there should be limitations and protections for our children. It's extremely important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's important to just make sure that, there are appropriate gates on applications, that age verification is real and not perfunctory, so that it actually does check, and that it doesn't market to minors if it's not intended for minors. And with those kind of protections, I think companies can be somewhat protected. But when it comes to AI, understanding that full range of possibilities that the AI can do is what tells us what the risk profile is. And that is very challenging and depends upon what tools the AI has at avail and how much oversight it has, and then what the compliance is like at the organization itself. So there's a lot that goes into protecting children, and it's not a easy answer. It's one of those situations where companies can operate in a gray area because it's not perfectly known what's exactly good enough and what's not. But I think we all know when it's wrong. It's sort of it sort of becomes much more clear. So the thing that we attorneys do is we try to imagine that the worst thing has happened, and then we step back in time and say, well, what would I have done differently? I imagine that the disaster happened, and what would I have done differently?
Yeah, age verification is not such an easy task. That means identifying every single person using specific app, and there are many people advocating against this.
Yes, interestingly enough, protecting children often has some tension with privacy because you have to gather birth date to verify, and to do it correctly, you may need some form of government ID. And that, of course, means that you have to capture very sensitive information, which then means you need to be very compliant in terms of security, and there are costs involved in all of that. So, and the user themselves may not want to provide that information for privacy reasons. So there's some interesting push and pull between child privacy and privacy in general.
Right. Now, when it comes to children's privacy, I agree to provide my ID and give whatever you need, but let's keep our children safe.
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion, but I know there are many different views on this topic.
yeah, I happen to share your view.
Wonderful. So the main trend that we're seeing now is protection of children's privacy, protection of our children, not only in terms of privacy, but also in terms of use of AI, because there were so many instances already where children were hurt in the process of using AI chatbots.
Yes, and there's even generationally some pain too. I mean, the young people in my life have a very different view than I do towards AI right now, even. I look at it as amazing and empowering and interesting and also scary. Young people in my family look at it as pretty much the apocalypse.
Oh, really?
Some of them are
Interesting.
thinking,
And why
yeah,
is
because
that?
they're worried about jobs. They're worried about like, what will I grow up to be?
Hmm.
I wanted to be this, but apparently AI can do that already. Because a lot of young people, envision themselves going into a profession, and professions are knowledge base, and I think that I don't think that our generation is going to come up with a solution for this exactly. I think it'll be very interesting to see what people who are 20 years old right now, 15 years old right now, what they are going to do with this. Because I've seen some of them deciding to completely not use AI at all for any reason.
Yes,
And I think
my
that's
family
actually,
as well.
yeah, I think that's actually, why is it in many circumstances, I happen to use it because I need to and it helps. But I think that, some young people, if they're trying to develop critical thinking skills, then AI is a crutch and it's not really the best thing because you really do need to know approximately what you're looking for in order to be able to detect if the output from the AI is wrong. Because it doesn't matter how smart the AI is or how good the tool is, it's going to hallucinate once in a while. And, um, and I think that that's the real, younger people really need to develop critical thinking skills. They need to go through the hard work of doing the math problems themselves, reading the story, doing the reading comprehension, all of that, because that's what makes life enriching. See, now there's my old English teacher coming back, but it's yeah. I mean, I think that there are those risks that are outside of privacy that are equally concerning for young people.
Yeah. So when you don't practice law and don't build AI tools, what do you do outside of work?
Nothing. No, I'm just kidding. No. Actually,
It's also good. Sometimes doing nothing is good. This is when
I
we feel that we become more creative and we take those moments of silence.
I really like to do things with my daughter, like bake treats and I'm teaching her French and playing music, things like that. And because they're just totally outside of screens, they help exercise, other parts of my psyche. I like baking baguettes and sharing them with the family. I like making waffles on the weekend mornings and uh, and playing songs and having fun, you know,
And you're in
because
Oregon, so you have a beautiful nature.
yeah, we can go out for walks all the time. We have a long growing season. It's great to go, great to get out there and see the daffodils coming up in February. I mean, it's nice. I grew up in the Northeast. They're having blizzards right now.
I don't want to go back, right? They show there's so much snow everywhere.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah.
But
My family is
Oregon,
snowed
it's
in.
a lot of rain too. They say it's very depressing there, no?
Yeah, but I mean, it's only been like this for a week. We had a really dry January with, sunshine all the time. People were worried that the mountains weren't going to get enough snow for the snowpack and all that. I mean, so I like the rain.
Yeah, I have been to Portland several times. It's very beautiful there. The nature just amazing.
Very green, especially this time of year. It's great. Yeah, I like it a lot. It's a good place to raise a family.
Yeah. So you love spending time with your family, with your wife and your daughter. Good.
Yep.
I remember you
Yep.
play guitar, right?
Yeah, I've got a 12-string guitar and I like to just refine that every once in a while, get a little better at things, learn a new song, get a little better at vocals. Um, I like to play I like to play classic French songs because they're challenging.
Why
Uh,
French? Where did that come from? Could you tell
oh,
that story?
I spent a semester abroad in Dijon, Burgundy in France, and it just changed my life. I think I was always given to French because I grew up in Maine, which wasn't far from Quebec, and I like to go up there and go for walks in Quebec City, and it wasn't far away. And I could never really speak it, but when I spent a semester abroad with this wonderful family, and I just fell in love with the food and the culture and the different set of values. I mean, I'm very much an American, but there's an aspect of me that feels French and that really appreciates what Europeans and particularly the French enjoy doing with their time, enjoy eating, place their emphasis on, talk about all those things.
Social connection in real life, right?
Yeah.
They spend a
Yeah.
lot of time in their little cafes, drinking cappuccinos,
Yeah, and they're
nice
like
pastry.
it's important, you know? I mean people sit down and have a conversation at dinner. They get together and you know, and they talk and really discuss and I don't feel like there's as many barriers about certain things that people talk about, maybe.
And
it's
I like
interesting.
that there's this strong connection between generations too in you.
Yeah, there's much more I mean I was with who I call my French family on this disco bus tour around Paris for someone's birthday. And it's this loud bus. There's like, a party going on, and it was just going around the city and like stopped in front of the L'Arc de Triomphe, and everyone got out and danced, and then got back into the bus and went around. And there was a 98-year-old woman on that bus, and some older folks, and then there were people, in the mid-range, and there were lots of little children too. Like it was everybody together having a good time, and I think that I love this country and I love our culture, but I feel like we separate generations more than we should. And we like to put everyone in their tidy homes and everything. And there's something truly lost in that.
I agree. I agree. I also ask my podcast guests about kindness. What does kindness mean to you?
Well, I think that I mean there's being nice and there's being kind, right? To me, being kind is different from just being nice. Being nice is being polite, being courteous, letting someone do something that mildly annoys you or something, you just let them do it because you're nice. I think kindness is when you do something that is truly inconvenient for yourself, that you do for someone else. Um, and I think that's really the basis of kindness.
Right. We need more kindness in the world. But also remember being kind to yourself.
That's true too. I mean, and that's also it's a strong kindness too, because we all walk around with critical voices in our own heads that are planted there from various things. And I think that kindness there means freeing ourselves from judging ourselves. And sometimes that means we need to not judge others, because believe it or not, when you judge others, that same little voice comes back and judges you.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time, Alex. I would like to wish you good luck with your new tool. And thank you so much for the work you're doing in the privacy sector. I think it's extremely important and becomes more and more important as this AI systems become more and more powerful. We need people like you protecting our privacy.
Well, thank you very much, Christina. It's been my pleasure to be on your podcast, and I appreciate very much the invitation and the time that you've spent as well. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.